Welcome to the John freaking Muir Pod. Lace up those boots and sling on the pack for a romp through trails, short and long. With your host and Renaissance man, Doc. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail, dirtbags and hiker trash. I'm Doc, and this is the John freaking Muir Pod. Let's start off with a reminder. If you are enjoying the podcast, take just a minute, help us out, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're not enjoying the pod, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right, let's get to this week's guest, who is a PCT thru hiker with quite a backstory. Welcome to the John freaking Muir Pod, Josh Murphy. How's it going, Josh?
Oh, it's going good. Thanks for having me, Doc.
Absolutely. Now, Josh, I noted that you are a PCT thru hiker. During those 2,650 miles, did you happen to pick up a trail name along the way?
Yeah. I mean, I only did 2,300 miles and some change because of the fire closures, just to put an asterisk next to my thru hiker title there. But no asterisk needed. It is getting more and more difficult these days to complete the PCT because of fire season. That's for sure. But to answer your question, yeah, my trail name is Long Story.
Long Story?
Yeah.
Okay. And how did you come by Long Story? Is it a long story for you to tell us how you came by Long Story?
It's not that long. So when I was at the McDonald's in Cajon Pass, actually, hiker I met, shout out to Ramble, if you're listening to this, wherever you are now. He asked me, what brought you to the PCT? I said, well, that's kind of a long story, but, we've got the time sitting here in our McDonald's. And I'm like, I'll try to make it short. So, that's never how it goes. And after about like a dozen times saying long story short, he's just kind of like, do you have a trail name? I was like, kinda. I'm not wild about it. He's like, how about long story short or long story? I'm like, long story flows a lot better. We'll go with that.
That is a slick trail name. I like it. Long story.
Hey, a lot of people say that. Yeah, it usually gets a good reaction. It confuses people sometimes. They'll be like, what's your trail name? I'll say Long Story, and they're just kind of waiting. And they're like, oh, that's your trail name. Yeah, it's some awkward interactions for sure.
Nice. I am always up for some awkward interactions. Those are the best.
Hey, they make you feel alive.
Now, I'm hoping that with your trail name being Long Story, that we may get some stories out of this episode.
We'll see where it goes.
Okay, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. And in fact, I'm going to change your name right now on the screen from Josh Murphy to the even better name of Long Story.
As is fitting.
Okay. All right. Hey, have you had a chance, Long Story, to listen to the podcast before?
I have. Yeah, I started listening shortly before we first talked. I saw one of my friends I made on the PCT was going to be on, so I checked out your page, checked out the podcast, and it's strange to hear your voice communicating with me now after like just hearing you talk to so many other people. But yeah.
I talk as often as I can in public just so I can have that one moment maybe in my life where someone goes, hey, are you Doc from the John freaking Muir Pod? That moment hasn't happened yet.
One of these days.
One of these days. Like you said, we can only hope. Or maybe I said that.
I'll say it too. We can only hope.
Okay. Very good. I asked you if you listen to the podcast because I want to make sure that you are aware of a segment that happens towards the end of the episode called the Pro Tip Insight of the Week. And that's where I will turn to you and ask you to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even better. So don't be surprised when we get there.
Gotcha.
Okay.
It's time for a current event.
All right. Every once in a while, we throw in a current event in the episode. This is probably surprising for you. This was not on the outline. So you probably have no idea what we're going to talk about here. But occasionally I'll throw in a story that's ripped right from the headlines, something to do with adventure and nature, hiking maybe. And we have a little discussion about it. But this time I have thrown in a current event because we just lost a former guest that was on the podcast just a few weeks ago, Phil Tucker, aka Swamper from Mississippi. He told us his story. He had a very rough life in the beginning, got kind of off course, involved with some dangerous elements, and pulled himself out of it and moved up to Montana and Wyoming and got out in the outdoors. And it kind of turned his life around. And through a series of unfortunate events, he ended up losing his leg, lower part of his leg, his right leg. And he was kind of down in the dumps and found some YouTube channels and adventure accounts and kind of put together a bucket list that he wanted to accomplish, including hiking the PCT. But unfortunately, a couple weeks ago, he suffered a stroke and he actually passed yesterday. So I thought it'd be fitting to just mention that to our listeners. If you haven't followed my Instagram account and you haven't seen the recent posts in honor of Phil Tucker, at least you'll hear it here that he passed. Unfortunately, it's a big hardship on all who knew him. He's from a small town in Mississippi, and I know that they're all kind of feeling the emotions right now. So I just wanted to take a minute, honor him, remember him. He was a great guest. He had a very thick Mississippi accent. He was really fun to listen to. And as we started that episode, I was wondering, as we were talking, I'm like, what are people going to think of this episode? Because he had that Southern drawl, and but as the episode got on, I had a ton of fun talking to him. He was a really interesting guy, had a great story, and really, really sad to hear about his passing. So this current event's about Phil Tucker, and long story. I'm just throwing this out here. Just for the listeners out there, you can comment. You don't have to comment. This is just my opportunity to recognize Phil.
No, he said he was an amputee.
Yeah. He actually got, I think he fell through the ice when he was up in Montana or in Wyoming, and didn't take care of it properly afterwards. And it kind of turned into a long running problem for him that eventually led to the amputation of his lower right leg.
Gosh, that's I think about, if that happened to me, I just kind of feel like, my life would be over, but I know, a good friend of mine is an above the knee amputee, and he's actually an endurance athlete. He's sponsored by a bunch of companies. He's a really great guy. Shout out to Dan Kosick. And, after talking with him, it completely changed my perspective on life in a lot of ways. But, he took that as an opportunity to just completely add fuel to his fire for doing all the incredible things that he does and continues to do. And I'm sure this man you're talking about, it was the same thing for him. It really, knowing these people, knowing their legacy, it really kind of helps put your own life and problems that we have into perspective. Could always be worse. And, any situation we encounter is what we make of it,
Absolutely. It's not how many times you get knocked down, but how many times you get up.
100%. Yeah.
Phil kind of demonstrated that. He also had, a fun fact about Phil. He had a mountain lion as a pet for many, many years.
Wow. Okay.
So, living in the swamps, I guess that's how you roll.
You get used to just being around dangerous animals out there, I guess. So
that's right.
Yeah.
He told the funny story. He shot a snake and he was going to skin it. He was going to, do some taxidermy or something. And then when he was getting the razor blade out and started his first cut up by the snake's head, that's when he realized that he didn't actually shoot the snake. It actually was a ricochet and knocked the snake out. And the snake came to and bit him on his hand. He was like 12 years old.
Wow.
And probably 2 hours from a hospital, and ran in with I'm not sure if the snake was still hanging off of his hand or if he had rid himself of the snake, but ran into his mom, and the whole time they were wondering if he was going to make it to the hospital in time. But
gosh,
he did. But swamp stories, so good stuff.
That is a hardcore man, and may he rest in peace and his memory live forever.
Absolutely, well said, sir. Well said.
The Must Bring Gear Review.
All right, moving on. Another feature we've been doing this season is the Must Bring Gear Review, sponsored by the ultralight backpacking gear company 6 Moon Designs. Have you heard of 6 Moon Designs?
I have. I was looking at one of their tents at one point, and I actually carried one of their sun umbrellas for a little bit. I found it in Kennedy Meadows and carried it for a good chunk of the first leg of the Sierras. Yeah,
I've had a number of people talk to me about solar umbrellas and about how handy they are on the PCT, especially during that desert section.
Yeah, for a while I was hiking with someone that had one, and we would take breaks underneath it. It really handy.
Nice. All right. So here's how this works. If you were to let a stranger pack your bag with pretty much generic gear for a multi-day hike, like the PCT, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? And if you've got a particular brand for that specific piece of gear, even better. So long story, what's your must-bring piece of gear out there?
My must-bring piece of gear is 100% my camera. Yeah, if that counts as
Oh, it absolutely
hiking
does.
gear. Okay, yeah, that's 100% my camera.
Okay, so a lot of us
and a lens or two.
Okay, a lot of us out there are carrying their phone to use as a camera. It's a multifunctional device, but I'm assuming you're talking more than just like an iPhone. What kind of camera are you bringing out there?
So I on the PCT I carried so I had about 8 pounds of camera gear with me. I had a Sony A7 IV, a Tamron 70 to 180 2.8 lens, and a 20 millimeter 1.8 lens. So covered a wide range with all that. And yeah, I guess pretty much that sort of setup is the one, if you want to include all that as a piece of gear.
Right.
Oh, and of course my tripod. Gotta have that.
And a tripod. 8
long
pounds
exposures. Yeah. Yeah, it was worth the wait.
Yeah. Now, did you carry the camera was it on a strap? Did you pack it away? Did you have a clip on your shoulder or something that allowed you for quick access? How did that work?
I had it's made by this company, Matador. They make a bunch of different outdoor and travel gear. Wish I had it here with me to show, but basically it's like a pouch that my camera fits in, and it's dust proof and waterproof. Kind of has like a roll top, almost like a hyperlight bag would. And I had that configured across my chest for a while, so I would pull my camera out, like so. But I eventually found the best way to have it was to put it through my hip belt on my pack, so it kind of hung off my hip. So I'd have my camera on my left side, and I had my tripod hung off my right side with its little case that it came in. So I would just kind of cross draw for my camera, get my tripod out as needed, because if you can't easily access these things, you're not going to use them.
That's right.
Right. I shout out to my friend Eric. I'm probably going to do a bunch of random shout outs. I don't know why.
Perfect.
Throughout
we love
this
the
video,
shout outs.
but
because we know if you're shouting them out, that means you're going to tell them to listen to the episode. So
exactly, yeah. So shout out to Eric, who is currently in medical school over in Ireland. Bought me a Peak Design travel tripod for this hike specifically, because my old one, I had it like on the side pocket of my pack, so I would have to take my pack off, set it down. Big pain. So pro tip, I guess, take an easily accessible tripod, or you probably won't use it very often.
Oh, he's going early with the pro tip. Already dropping those nuggets of wisdom.
Bonus pro tip, I guess.
Bonus. Nice. Now, having listened to you describe that, I've got a couple of different images in my mind. One is like a really big, oversized fanny pack, which seems kind of awkward and funny in my mind. And then also the way you're describing it with the camera on your left and the tripod on your right, I would have called you gunslinger. You just like quick draw McGraw, pulling those things out and taking some shots.
I dig that. Yeah. Would have been, I would have taken that over long story. Sure. Why not? But
too late. Long story is too good a one already.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with long story. It's better than my potential original trail name, which was almost Shake Up, because instead of a shake down, I had so much stuff with me that I can teach you how to carry more rather than carry less. I don't know. That was kind of an inside joke with my original trail family, but
nice. Shake Up. That's kind of clever too. But I do like long story.
It almost sounded like arrogance in a way. So that's I don't know. I wasn't really about it because of that. And to be honest, the next time I do something like this, 100% shaken down more. Got to lighten that load up. The less nonsense I have, the more camera stuff I can have. So
I think that's a common lesson by a lot of folks out there. They go on their first big trip and they over prepare, which is great. I mean,
and
you want to be prepared.
Honestly, I was pretty dialed in. Like I'm very conscious of, being lightweight. Wouldn't exactly call myself ultralight, but I did have like an extra battery pack 2 power banks, I should say, and probably more wires than I needed just because, redundancy. But yeah, could always stand to shed more weight.
So this leads to a lot of great questions and right into the next segment. So I thank you for the easy segue. But if you're carrying 8 pounds of extra gear, of camera gear, what did you cut back on anything? What was your pack weight for the PCT? What was your base weight?
So I only weighed my stuff once. Didn't want to know. I figured, if I knew what the number was, I might use it as an excuse to I don't know, slack a little more, or take it easier where I shouldn't have. But basically, the one time I weighed my pack, it weighed 47 pounds with the food and everything in it. So I think that's before, that might have been with 2 liters of water also. So, and my bear can, it was at Kennedy Meadows. Right before I was about to head back out in the Sierra, they've got that little hook over in the corner. So I don't know how calibrated that thing is, but I threw my pack on that thing and it read somewhere between like 45, 47-ish pounds. That's before camera gear.
That's before camera gear. That's pretty stout right there.
It was pretty stout. Yeah. But I also kept falling victim to this idea that I'm going to carry enough food to just send it for whatever 5-6 days straight. So I'll carry like a week's worth of food to play it safe. And it slowed me down. And, I would end up eating more of the food than was necessary and would end up having to stop, get off trail sooner than anticipated. And, somehow that's just never a lesson that I fully learned. So like the last leg of the hike, but yeah.
Just in time.
Just in time. Yeah. That ego kept taking a hit, wouldn't stay down, I guess.
Now I love that you said you only weighed your pack once because you didn't want to know. And I think that's smart. I think if you're weighing your pack and then how much that weight is, you're exactly right. It gives you an excuse to say something, right? And so ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance can be bliss. Yeah. And hey, don't be like me, definitely be more conscious, make an effort to be as lightweight as possible. There's plenty of ultralight forums and stuff out there. Get dialed in.
Yeah. Or you could be like Doc. I like to say that if ignorance is bliss, I'm one of the happiest guys on the planet.
That too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Basically either be extremely dialed in or just never worry about it. There's beyond one of those 2 ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. Don't be in the middle. Don't
be in the middle. Yeah.
Don't be in the middle. Another bit of a pro tip there. Don't be in the middle. Yeah. Okay. Hey, to help us talk about gear, we've got another segment we call
It's the hiking pole.
The hiking pole. And it's not POLE like hiking poles in your hands. It's POLL like a survey.
I appreciate a good pun.
You like the cleverness there? I always explain it. I always explain it because I like to show how clever I am. One of my listeners. Thank you. One of my listeners sent me a picture on Instagram of a segment in, I think it was either Backpacker magazine or Outside magazine, where they had the hiking pole. And I'm like, hey, somebody at that magazine's been listening and stole my idea. I need to get royalties.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, long story. That's a long story, but anyway, back to the main story. This is a 7-question survey about hiking, where I'm going to get your opinion one way or the other, and it's going to help me determine where you fall on the sanity scale from 1 to 100, with 1 being completely insane and 100 being completely sane. Now, because you are a completer of the PCT, long trail through hikers get an automatic 25-point deduction because there's something wrong with you.
For sure.
Yeah. So your
won't argue with that.
Your top score is 75. Top possible score is 75. If I were to ask your family and friends to give you a score on the sanity scale, where do you think they'd rank you?
I think on a good day, probably somewhere around a 50 or a 60.
Okay, so maybe north of the midline there.
Maybe. But they could just be being nice. I don't know.
Yeah, if I asked them and they knew the answer wouldn't get back to you, what would the answer be?
Probably somewhere around a 40.
All right, 7 questions. You ready?
Let's do it.
Do you know what these questions are?
Yeah, I've listened to the podcast enough, but I know maybe you'll switch it up. I know sometimes you do. Sometimes you do,
I
right?
do switch it
Yeah.
sometimes. Well, since you know, I may have to throw in a couple of random questions then.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right. We'll start off easy though. All right. So first question, trekking poles or no trekking poles out there?
Trekking poles, definitely. Yeah. It's funny you say that because first time I ever used a pair of trekking poles, I was hiking up in the Catskills in preparation for the PCT with one of my buddies, and he had an extra pair, and I was like, I'll try these out, I guess. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, these things are for old people. And after that day, it completely changed me. I was like, this is a game changer. It's like having 4 legs. This is incredible. Like my knees feel so much better. There's like going downhill, they're invaluable. So yeah, I'm very pro trekking pole.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's maybe not a common misconception, but I think it's something that new hikers they kind of have an uneasy relationship with trekking poles. They're like you said, it's for old people, or I'm gonna look goofy with these. Yeah. What are people gonna think of me? And they really miss out on the benefit of the trekking poles.
No, for sure. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. If you've never experienced it, then you just don't know.
Okay. Question number 2. I'm going to throw you off your game here.
All right.
This doesn't necessarily relate to hiking, but I'm going to throw it in anyway. Long story. What is your most useful skill in case of a zombie apocalypse?
My most useful skill. Probably just a willingness to go out there and kill zombies as needed. I guess that would be my role, Someone's got to be not afraid to do that. So I guess let me do it.
Okay.
You guys, I don't know, whatever the team is made up of, I'm sure people with more useful assets than just going out there and tanking on the zombies. But I guess that would be me. Okay. Off the top of my head, at least.
All right. And would you be killing them from afar? Would you be killing them up close? And how does that work?
I mean, ideally, I'd be suited up in some capacity so they couldn't bite me or get to me easily. So probably use some sort of melee weapon to conserve ammo. But yeah, depends on what kind of zombie also. Are they fast zombies? Or is there a swarm of slow zombies? Depends.
Yeah, are these the Walking Dead zombies, or are these like the Brad Pitt, is it Generation Z zombies?
Yeah, if they're Walking Dead zombies, probably just, they'd be a little easier to deal with. Yeah. But if they're super fast, super strong zombies, then no. I don't think any of us are making it that long in that situation.
Yeah, maybe wrap yourself up in your Six Moon Designs tent or tarp.
There we go. You can use the tent to kind of hold them back and go over with a trekking pole, Roman Legionnaire style, something like that.
Okay. All right. Hey, speaking of tents and tarps, question number 3. In terms of your shelter, your preferred shelter out there, do you prefer a tent, tarp, hammock, bivvy, or cowboy camping?
I prefer cowboy camping. I cowboy camped for most of the desert. Like I'd say probably 95% of the desert. And my first night cowboy camping in the Sierra, I woke up covered in ice. So yeah, that kind of reverted me back to using my tent. And then once the mosquitoes got bad, so pretty much throughout the entirety of the Sierra, I was back in my tent, whether I had the rain cover on or not. It usually didn't. Usually it was just acting as a giant bug net, essentially. But cowboy camping when I can, when bugs are in the picture, definitely in my tent. So I guess a little more than one answer there.
That's okay. As long as you explain yourself, it's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Let's throw this up again. Question number 4. Do you use the Oxford comma?
Yeah, I'll use a comma more often than I should probably, but.
So you write your stuff down and you just kind of go back and sprinkle some commas through, or Is there any kind of
I tend to kind of, I guess, much like my trail namesake, when I write, I really should break it up into just different sentences more often, but I'll just keep stringing on words to a sentence and like adding to it. And yeah, next thing you know, yeah,
it could have been, your trail name could have been stream of consciousness. That's a lot of syllables.
That's too many syllables. I like it, but yeah, that's why long story short didn't stick, because it can't be. 3 words is a lot. Let's be honest. There's only so much time out there. Yeah.
If you are out on the trail and a tree is falling and you need to get your attention, I mean, long story short, by the time they get that out, I mean, you could be squashed already. So
100%. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the Oxford comma is the second comma in a short series. So like the flag is red, white, and blue. The Oxford comma would be the comma that comes after white, between white and. Right. Some people say, hey, the and is the separator. You don't need a comma. But us purists of the English language, people who have been speaking English our whole lives, we prefer the Oxford comma. You get rid of the Oxford comma, society starts to break down. So do you have a firm opinion on that one way or the other?
Whatever floats your boat. As long as I can understand what you're trying to say, then I got it. Just try not to use the wrong there.
Well, punctuation, is a life and death situation. Did you know this long story?
I do now.
Yeah, because, there's a big difference between let's go eat grandma and let's go eat grandma.
Yeah, no, definitely. And as someone that's writing a book, I should definitely have stronger opinions on such matters. But yeah,
we're gonna have to hear about the book later. So let's put a pin in that. But we're gonna come back to that. All right. Hey, let's go back to when you woke up with ice on you in the Sierras. That brings me to question number 5. When you're sleeping, do you prefer sleeping bag or quilt?
I've never used a quilt, so I guess sleeping bag by default. Yeah.
And what was your bag rated to up there in the Sierras?
So it was 5 degrees. Yeah, I had this North Face sleeping bag, the North Face, the one bag. So it's actually modular and can go from like a 40, 20, or a 5 degree bag. And I had it in 5 degree configuration for, till about Sierra City, actually, when I sent home part of it to cut down on some weight. But yeah, it was rated for 5 degrees. I was never cold. Okay. Never had a cold night on trail. Put it to you.
So even that night even that morning you woke up with ice on you.
I was cozy.
Slept right.
I was actually pretty cozy. Yeah, I didn't even get wet, like through the ice and frost. Yeah. So shout out to the North Face, I guess.
Another shout out. It's a good testimonial for North Face.
Yeah, I guess I'm just noticed I'm wearing a North Face pullover too.
I'm gonna have to tag them on the Instagram.
North Face, go ahead and sponsor me anytime now.
or me.
Yeah, joint operation.
Long story.
Yeah.
My podcast. Okay. Question number 6. Question
for
number
someone.
6. Let's see. Here's another good one. Do you roll your toilet paper over or under?
Just anarchy when it comes to that. I don't care.
Just put it on any old which way.
Any old which way. To be honest, I don't even care if it's just sitting there, as long as I can get to it when I need it.
I had a guess.
I know some people are firmly planted one way or the other on that, and I just I could never get myself to care enough.
Yeah, so, you'd be surprised at some of the answers I get on this show. I had a guest ask me a follow-up question. After I'd asked him this question, he asked me back, and he says, "Are you a folder or a crumpler?"
Well, I'm a folder for sure. Yeah.
Well, that surprises me. I mean, any which way, I would have you pegged as a crumpler.
Well, I mean, hey, at the end of the day, I guess, access to the toilet paper and how I use the toilet paper, that's 2 different things, right? But you got to do it any way you can at the end of the day, I suppose.
Yeah, we can only hope.
Yeah. As long as it's there.
That might be this episode title. We can only hope. It's already come up 3 or 4 times. So
we can only hope.
All right. And question number 7. Out there on the PCT, when it comes to food, were you stove, cold soak, or stoveless?
So I started out cold soaking actually. And I did that for, well, I wouldn't say quite a while. I did that till about Big Bear. So, I started out, I'm going to be this utilitarian hard ass. I don't need anything. I'm just going to cold soak the same food constantly. And, man, that became just like not only mentally a struggle, but I just started to get so repulsed by cold soaked instant oats. Like I'm like basically gagging between bites of food at one point, and started making camp with the same people after a while, and they were eventually like, "Hey," this was before I was long story, but they were like, "Hey, Josh, like, we ate so much of this warm like food that we cooked, we can't eat anymore. Would you like the rest of our food?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, sure." And after a couple times doing that, looking at my cold soaked couscous, these nice hot meals that I can actually stomach and enjoy, choice became pretty obvious. So when we got into Big Bear, I bought myself a stove set up, and it's history ever since.
Nice. You know what I like about that story, long story, is you clarified that this was before you were long story, and they said, "Hey, Josh." It kind of just like put me right there in the moment, knowing exactly where I was on the trail with you. Was this before or after the conversation with the guy about the long story? So yeah, that's nice. It's a good touch.
I'm glad I could add that.
All right. Hey, let me take your answers. I'm going to put them through the John Freaking Muir Pod algorithm. We do some quick math here and see what we come up with. We need to do some math. I got to carry the 2. We're going to multiply by root 3. So I got to multiply by divide by pi. And then I'm going to adjust for the temperature at the top of Whitney. Did you do Whitney along the PCT?
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right.
Yes, I did.
And I come up with the very substandard score of 42. 42. So
yeah,
congratulations.
Sounds about right, I guess.
When I get an answer, when I get a sanity scale in the 40s, I know it's going to be a hell of an interview. So I'm really excited about this.
Me too.
All right. Hey, let's back up a little bit. Long story. Let's hear about your background, where you grew up, what kind of sports and hobbies you were involved with, and how did you get involved in thru hiking?
All right. Well, I guess from the top. So I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, Athens, Pennsylvania. It's right on the New York State border. When I explain to people where I'm from, I just tell them, if you know where Ithaca, New York is, I'm directly an hour south of that, just on the Pennsylvania border. I grew up, my parents were pretty poor. So I spent a lot of time on my grandparents' dairy farm up in the hills, and spent a lot of my youth just kind of roaming those hills, looking for, cool stuff in the woods, whatever kids do, Like my weekends up there, I'd pretty much just grab a .22 rifle, fill a backpack up with food, and just wander the woods looking for cool stuff, reading books, what have you. And I was also very overweight my whole life. I was always the largest person in the room. It would be extremely rare to see another person that was heavier than I was. That kind of culminated to me weighing almost 450 pounds later in life. But yeah, that kind of dictated a lot of how I lived my life, how I viewed life. I never really thought I had that many prospects in life because of that. And I don't want to be too depressing, but yeah, a lot of like my life story really does stem around the fact that I used to be extremely overweight. And, that's something I never thought would change. Something that I thought I would die overweight with a cigarette in my hand, So pretty much my teenage years were just spent kind of bombing around, wasting my time essentially. Just, doing more partying than schoolwork, that kind of thing. Just doing just enough to get by in high school, and in some cases, not even that. And, then came time to graduate, and I went to college because, well, I guess you're supposed to go to college. At least that's what my generation was. That's what was kind of shoved down our throats. So, I went to college with no purpose, no real direction for a major that just meant nothing to me in the long run. And after doing that dance for a while, getting pretty crappy grades, I ended up coming back to my hometown because I finally realized, okay, this is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it. So I was going to just finish out my gen ed credits at a local community college. And I wanted to go to RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology for photojournalism. One of my dreams in life had always been to be a Nat Geo photographer. That was something I always was fascinated by. I used to have cardboard boxes just filled with Nat Geo mags. I don't know where they came from. I don't know where they went, but there were always hundreds of them up at my grandparents' house, and I was always so infatuated by that. And thought I was going to go do that, but one thing led to another, and my grandparents actually fell on really poor health. And my grandmother broke a hip, actually. And so she was between being in the hospital and rehabilitation. She was pretty much in a hospital and a rehab setting for over a year, which left my grandfather by himself, who was, it was very hard for him to get around. And I just kind of stopped going to school, got a job, and lived with and took care of him. And then eventually he was in and out of the hospital for almost a year, and it was my grandmother that was in kind of a reverse role situation. So pretty much most of my 20s, I found myself in this place where I was just a caregiver for my grandparents, living with them and not taking care of myself at all. I just let myself go in my 20s by and large, just eating and drinking myself to death, as soon as the weekends would roll around and, my younger sister would take over watching my grandparents when she wasn't in school. I would just go out and eat, drink, smoke cigarettes, just try to numb my reality, essentially, because I could barely stand to look at myself in the mirror, if I'm being completely honest. Everyone around me, a lot of my friends are like very well put together, come from very well adjusted homes and backgrounds, and are like well accomplished. And, around this time, I'm like, 23? So yeah, most of my friends are like graduating college or starting like graduate school, medical school. And I had like nothing going on. And I don't know and I guess that's kind of like the fallacy of the whole social media thing. We see everyone online living great lives. And whether that's the case or not, it's really easy to kind of get caught up and feel worthless, added on to the fact that I just, like I said, couldn't stand to even look myself in the mirror because of just how overweight and what poor health I was in. And so, yeah, it was a very dark time in my life, my mid to late 20s. And one day I quit smoking cigarettes out of the blue. Okay. I knew I was getting sick. I could feel like a sinus infection coming on, and I thought to myself, I better relax on the cigarettes for a day or so, just to make this more bearable. When you live the lifestyle, I would get sinus infections several times a year. It was a pretty regular thing. I smoked almost 2 packs of cigarettes a day, ate processed foods pretty much completely. And so come about 5 days later, I still got sick, of course, but I noticed, holy shit, I haven't had a cigarette in 5 days. It's probably the longest I've been without a cigarette since I was like 16 years old. What else can I do? And that was like the first domino that fell for me. And it just turned into a spiral effect of positive change. It went from quitting cigarettes to, okay, let's start eating healthier. Once I fell into that rhythm and routine, it was, let's start, going for walks. And while I started doing all of that, I kind of revisited this idea that I'd had about wanting to join the Army, because I really had no prospects for what the hell I was doing with my life at this point in time. And it was something that had always been in the back of my mind that I would, wanted to do. I always wanted to serve. Specifically, when I was a child, I thought it would be cool to be a Marine, but I don't know, you get older and you read about different branches and different specialties, and I determined I wanted to be in Army Special Operations. I don't know, it all sounded crazy at the time, but that was like my drive, like, oh, I can do this if I just lose weight. Because I had randomly had a conversation with a good friend of mine, probably a year prior to that. He was a Marine, actually, and he joined the Army National Guard, and he came like after his tour in the Marines, and I was talking to him at one of the local watering holes when he visited town, and I'm like, oh, it's so awesome that you're in the Army. I always wanted to be a Ranger, I thought that would be awesome. And he's like, you should do it. And I'm just like, what do you mean? Look at me, man. He's like, you just got to lose weight, man. He's like, the military, it's all a mental game. He's like, just lose the weight. You can do it.
I'm going to stop you right there. Long story, because you're living up to your name. This is great. We're going to put a pin in that just for a second, because we're going to take a quick break here in just a sec. But before we go to break, I want to know, how old are you now?
I'm 32.
32. And how much do you weigh right now?
I'm probably walking around at like 230, 240 right now.
Okay. Wow. That's a couple 100 pounds lighter than where you were.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. That's incredible. So we're gonna find out more about how that happened and what happened in the Army when we come back from our break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We are talking to Long Story, who is doing his trail name very proud right now. We're in the middle of a long story, a great story, an engaging story. I'm interested to see where this goes. We left off with you talking to your buddy about possibly joining the Army. He was telling you, just do it, just join the Army. You always want to do it. And so what happened there?
Yeah, so his words of encouragement, that was one of the first times in my life, really, that anyone didn't laugh at my face with like the audacity of me being this person of 400 and whatever, close to 450 pounds, being like, I want to be an Army Ranger. Like, is some of the most laughable shit you could think about. But he planted that little seed of positivity that eventually sprouted into me heeding his advice. I was like, okay. So, like I said, quit smoking cigarettes, started making positive changes. And over the course of about a year and 23 days, I ended up losing 200 pounds through no other means than diet and exercise. Learned a lot in that time, mainly just how to be disciplined, how to set goals and go after them. My whole driving force was, that carrot dangling of, I'm going to join the Army and I'm going to be a fucking Army Ranger. Sorry if we can't curse on this. And I'm eventually going to be a Green Beret. I had this self-fulfilling prophecy in my mind of just walking down this path of becoming someone elite and standing shoulder to shoulder with some of the most elite people that have ever walked the face of this earth. Like, I wanted that more than anything. And, over the course of my entire weight loss experience, that was one of the biggest driving factors for me, was just that. Every decision I made in a day was, does this get me closer to my goal? And if the answer was no, throw it out. You don't need that. I lived a pretty utilitarian, boring, lonely life, but I don't regret a single second of it. So then 2017, I finally walk into a recruiter station down in this town about 20 minutes from where I lived. I didn't call. I didn't make an appointment. I didn't know the proper etiquette. I just kind of assumed you show up and say, hey, I want to join the Army. And they're like, all right, well, there's a bus that shows up and we give you some lucky strikes and you go to Georgia. That is not the case, for the record. Another bonus pro tip, if you are thinking of joining the military, it's not nearly as straightforward as you would assume it to be. and do not even remotely put your eggs near that basket for a long time in that process. But basically, I walked in and said, here's who I am. Here's what I've done. Here's what I want to do. Point blank. Like, what do we got to do? And they're like, well, we've never had someone just come in and know this. So cool.
That sounds like a reasonable approach. Long story. I mean, I would think that's, that's a way you go about doing it. There had to be more people doing that than you would think.
Apparently not. Apparently not. But so that whole endeavor from day one, little knock on the door, to oath of enlistment took almost 2 years to the day. There were ups, there were downs, there was a lot of uncertainty. For the majority of that time, I really had no idea if I was going to be able to join the Army because of I needed waivers for, I was arrested for some marijuana possession in my youth, forgive me. So that was something we had to get a waiver for. I had to get surgery on both of my legs to get rid of varicose veins, which I developed from being obese for so long. I had to switch careers to get insurance that would cover the cost of the surgery to get that procedure. It is fucking insane, the hoops I jumped through for 2 years to try and reach this goal. I talked to anyone that knew me well in that time, and it was nuts. And even thinking back on it now, like, God, a sane, rational person so many times would have just been like, you know what, I could invest this energy into anything else right now and, I don't know, be good. But I don't know, to me, I was just so obsessed and committed to the idea.
That's the word I was going to use. Long story. That's the word I was going to use, was committed. You were committed to this idea.
I was, I was doing push-ups anytime I could, like, especially once I took the oath. But, once it was finally go time, and I finally swore in, and it was like, all right, this is it. I sold pretty much all my possessions except for like 2 plastic totes with some clothes, some books, my camera, of course, and just my, basically what I could fit in my car. I just ended up ending a relationship I was in at the time. It was just the right thing to do, given, the way paths in life were taking me. It was a lot, I invested every fiber of my being into this, and it was finally go time. I had a ship date, and it was February 2020 is when I went down to Fort Benning. And we got off the bus, handed them our cell phones, and life was great. I never felt more ready for anything in my life, and never felt like I belonged anywhere more than when I was standing in formation, like just fresh off the bus with just my life in this like little backpack that my recruiter gave me, sounding off. It was finally, all I have to do now is work towards the goal that I've had this whole goddamn time. I'm gonna, it's group or I'm gonna die trying. So that energy lasted for about 9 days. So we were getting our boots issued down in the basement of Fort Benning there, and I had some leg swelling that had come back. That varicose vein surgery I mentioned earlier, the point of that was to get rid of leg swelling, lymphedema. And they told me from the jump that it would never be a permanent solution to the problem. But I was like, so it's a window that I can get through MEPS, and, because in my mind, once I, signed the paper, I'd be good to go. I was in. It never bothered me, so I didn't care if it never went away. I just needed to convince the MEPS doctors that I was good to go, which, I did. But then it came back, and the people issuing the boots refused to give me boots and made me go to medical. And I kind of walked in with this, like, I was nervous because you never want to go to medical for any reason, but I had this like false sense of confidence, like, hey, it's cool. I made it through MEPS. Like, nothing to worry about. You can send me back down to get my boots. And they're just like, you shouldn't be here. I'm like, what? What do you mean I shouldn't be here? They're like, MEPS, they should not have sent you here. You will never have a career in the Army, were the exact words they said to me.
Oh no.
And they were not hearing it. They were not hearing it. It didn't matter what I had done to get to that point. It didn't matter that I lost all this weight, and none of it mattered. It was so robotic. It was, you do not meet the standard. You're done.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
that was
that.
that.
We were talking about earlier. It's not how many times you get knocked down; it's how many times you get back up.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
How did you respond to this?
Not well. I mean, well enough in the moment, but I had no idea. Everyone keeps telling you wait 6 months. Just wait 6 months. You can try to come back. I'm like, okay. You know, I asked, do we have to do this? Can I get reevaluated up at I think Griner is the medical facility there. Just long story short, here I go. Right. I pretty much just started taking up space at that point. All I knew was that I was going home. I had no idea when. And my life was very firmly on one path, headed in one direction. And now I was going to get slingshotted back into my old life with far less than I had when I left it. So just taking up space down in Fort Benning. The library in the Bravo Company barracks was where I kind of sought refuge. And there was a book on the shelf called The Pursuit of Endurance by Jennifer Farr Davis. It was literally one of like 2 or 3 books that was not a Bible or a blue book, which is an Army manual. So I'm like, yeah, snatch this before someone else does. And yeah, I had never heard of the Pacific Crest Trail until I read that book.
See, right there, that's I know our listeners were asking, where's this story going, and how does this guy end up on the PCT? And so that was the moment. That was the book.
That was the book. Yeah. Incredible book. Highly recommend it. But I just was like, whoa, because I'd always heard of the Appalachian Trail, being from Pennsylvania, you know. My first thought was, there's a West Coast version of the Appalachian Trail. Like, that sounds fucking awesome. Thinking, man, like I have no idea what life has in store for me whenever I end up back home or back in civilian life. But you know, I'll have some money saved up. I'm gonna go out west. I'm gonna travel. I'll go to California. I'll check out a part of this trail. I'll go to like Crater Lake. This PCT sounds cool. But you know, I'm just gonna travel. I'm gonna go out and see the country. You know, now keep in mind, this is late February, March of 2020, and I have no idea what's happening in the outside world because I don't have a phone, and they don't, you know, we don't watch TV. We only know what we're told down there. So I had no idea the pandemic was happening and the travel restrictions were being in place and all that craziness. So about like 2 or 3 days before it was time to get back on a bus, they gave us a breakdown of the state of the world. And we're basically like, yeah, we're kind of sending you back to what could be the apocalypse. We don't really know. Have fun. You're not in the Army anymore. So, yeah, you know, came home just in time for the lockdown. Didn't go anywhere in that time. And just over the course of the pandemic, I had this, I like to call it a scene from a movie moment of clarity, where I realized what my new purpose and path in life was, and it was to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, document the whole thing, and write a book about my life experience and, you know, the trail experience and the lessons I learned from everything. Yeah.
So that's the book you're working on. Is it just about the PCT, or is it everything leading up to the PCT as well?
It is about everything before, during, and I guess here immediately after the PCT. Yeah.
All right. And how far are you in this process?
I'm hobbling things together that I've written throughout the process, and still writing more. I'm hoping to be done with the whole book in about a year's time.
Okay.
Yeah. Never written a book before, so it's all kind of a learning experience. But
it's just like showing up to the recruiter's office saying, I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah. You just got to do it.
Just got to do it. That's all.
You just got to do it. Yeah.
How do I get my advanced copy?
Sign up for my email list on my website. And,
you have a website. What's your website?
Well, my website is joshmurphyimaging.com, but I have a tab on there for my project that this whole thing falls under. It's called I'll Walk the Earth, is kind of the brand I'm trying to build. I hate saying build a brand because it sounds very like new age influencer douchey, but I am kind of trying to build a brand around, traveling and at the very least creating photo books and writing and that kind of thing. But yeah, you can go to joshmurphyimaging.com/I'll Walk the Earth and sign up for my email list. And
so in terms of building a brand, I think you need to branch out from having it be a tab on Josh Murphy Imaging. It should be, Josh Murphy Novelist or something.
Yeah, I'm
website.
Working on that.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So tell us, how did you end up at Campo? What year did you do it? Did you do it in 2022?
Yep, this just got done a little over a month ago now.
Oh, it's still fresh in your mind.
Still fresh in my mind, yeah.
Okay. Now, what did you expect? And did the trail live up to your expectations?
The trail far exceeded my expectations. Like, having experienced it all, I don't even know what I was expecting because it was just such an insane experience. It far exceeded anything I thought it would be. For sure, especially the Sierra. I keep looking at your background and just being taken right back. Yeah, those mountains.
Yeah, but, for those of you not on YouTube and you're listening to this, my background, of course, is always Evolution Lake, one of the prettiest spots in the Sierras, in my opinion. And so, what date did you start?
I started March 24th.
I love this
pretty early.
I love this about PCT hikers. They've got these dates just emblazoned upon their memory.
March 24th, 2022. I will never forget.
And when did you finish?
September 13th.
Okay, so less than 6 months.
Yeah, about 5.5.
5.5 months.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what was your favorite part? If you could distill it down. I mean, it kind of the trail has a distinct personality. I mean, split personalities, I would say. It's very different. It's, of course, it's a very long trail.
Very different. Yeah.
Very different type of ecosystems. Did you have a particular favorite?
Yeah, the Sierra. The Sierra was definitely my favorite. Because maybe Washington could have won out if I was able to see the entire state, but did not make it as far as I would have liked to in Washington. But the Sierra is hands down the most incredible place I've ever been and experienced in my life. Yeah, I don't even like to say the place I've been, because you really do you experience something when you're walking through those mountains. It's you'd have to be there.
Yeah. Now, when you showed up to Campo, I mean, what was going through your mind? Had you done any kind of overnight long distance backpacking trips before, or was this?
Yeah, I had done a few hikes in Pennsylvania, like 40 miles. The one was 60 miles. So just to give me an idea of what it was going to be like to, spend multiple days out in the woods. I did a solo overnight up in the Adirondacks to prepare as far as like camping wise. I mean, if you're curious about like what I did to train like physically, then I can love to go into that. I'm kind of a nerd about strength and conditioning stuff, but yeah, to prepare for the hike, got out and hiked as much as I could. And what was going through my mind when I got dropped off at Campo was just like, all right, this is it. Time to go do what you said you were going to do. Like, my aunts, I have a family that lives in Irvine, and they took me down to the terminus, and just watching them drive away, we're like, okay, this is me now. My wife's on my back. Let's go to Canada.
I thought for sure you're gonna use the same phrase you used when you got down to Fort Benning. it's go time.
Yeah, no, yeah. I was like, yeah, this is time to do this. It's all this preparation, all this, I don't know, shit talking, for lack of a better way to say it. It's just like, yeah, time to put your money where your mouth is, man.
Now, just having heard your experience of trying to get into the Army and everything that you did to do that, from having to get surgery, having to change your jobs to get insurance to get the surgeries, just that whole 2-year process, I have to imagine you were pretty committed to doing the PCT as well. You probably took that same frame of mind to that experience.
Yeah, so I'm the kind of person that I need a goal to be working towards. I mean, I guess probably most people are by nature, but I mean, for me, it's like a very existential thing. Like, I need to have a greater purpose than just waking up and going to work. I go stir crazy. I mean, like, for example, once the Army fell through and I had no clearly defined greater purpose in this world, I was extremely depressed. I was in a very, very bad place because I had no direction or purpose. I didn't know what the hell I was doing with myself. And it's like, I did not come as far as I've come. I did not lose 200 whatever pounds at that point to just succumb to monotony. I needed to do something crazy in a good way, something epic. And as soon as I had that moment of clarity that the PCT was it, I was in. I was going to die on that trail before I was going to quit. Hands down. Like, I didn't care if I ran out of money and couldn't afford to resupply. I would do whatever the hell I needed to do. If it meant starving to death and dying along the way, then that's how it panned out, because I was 100% committed to seeing that through to the best of my abilities. Now, it might sound insane, but yeah.
Well, now, having said that, did you find yourself at any time on the trail saying to yourself, oh my God, what the hell am I doing out here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I'm fully committed, but what in God's name am I doing out here?
Yep. A lot in Northern California was, I think, the most that I had that kind of just like, what the fuck? I was not enjoying myself for most of Northern California. It's funny, actually, the day two. So, I did like 5 miles the first day because I started kind of late and I was stopping to take a bunch of photos and like bloggy style videos. And the next thing you know, it's like sun's getting kind of low and there's this like really flat, nice area here, about 5 miles in, make camp here. And 15 miles to Lake Morena tomorrow? No sweat. I've been training. I'm in shape. Let's fucking do this. For the record, I'd never set foot in a desert before. I'd never been to a desert. I'd never dealt with like actual like exposure, no shade. So, and I didn't know how to use far out properly. I just saw that there were water sources. I was like, all right, I've got 3 liters. I'm good to go until the next water source. And by the time I made it to Hauser Creek, I was in pretty rough shape. I had found a water cache that was hot to the touch at that point. So I had about 4 liters all said and done that entire day. But about like a quarter of the way up Hauser Creek, I just sat down and was like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. I'm just covered in salt already at this point, and I've got maybe 2 liters at that point left in the day, and I have no idea where the next amount of water is, and I've got to go all the way up this hill. This was like, I did not bargain for this. I came out swinging. Like, I thought I was going to start easy doing 15 miles a day, and here I am on day 2 thinking, what if I have to hit this fucking button? What if it comes to that? Because I just like, and like I just said, my whole bravado, like I'm going to die out here if I have to. Like, oh man, the one of the driving factors that like kept me going that day was like, if I hit this button, I'm going to be part of a news story that gets shared in like every Facebook group everywhere, just every online forum. I can read the headline now: dumbass PCT hiker doesn't take enough water through the desert. So I'm like, with that, I'm going to keep moving.
There's not much worse than day 2 doubts. I mean, that's tough to handle.
Yeah. And apparently a lot of people did end up pushing their button that day. Come to find out, for those of you unfamiliar, Hauser Creek is kind of like the crucible for the PCT. So I've come to understand anyway, like that's a lot of people get taken out there, and understandably so. It's no joke. Even in March, it was like 90 degrees that day, which isn't hot for the desert, I guess. But when you don't have shade, it's a whole other animal. I mean, 90 degrees is hot no matter which way you shake it, I guess. But the lack of shade, it's a completely different animal. If you're thinking about doing the PCT, try to acclimate to heat as much as possible, especially if you're from the Northeast.
That was before you had your solar umbrella.
Long before.
That's right. Well, you came through the crucible, and you're stronger for it. So congratulations on that.
Yeah. It was felt pretty weird for a few days, but I eventually got back to it.
Okay. So I have an interesting question for you. Long story. What would northern terminus, long story, whisper into the ear of southern terminus, long story? Any advice you'd have for your novice PCT self?
Document more. Yeah, that. I mean, I did a decent job with photos, videos, and writing, but I always wish I did more. Even looking back, it's like, man, I don't know. There are specific spots that I remember thinking like, this would be a really awesome picture right now if I just set up my tripod and stood here. It's like, but it's getting late and I've got to make certain mileage. Like, and those haunt me. Those haunt me to this day. Like I will, almost asleep at night and just think back to, when I was on Mount Whitney, I could have gotten that one specific shot right before I decided to head back down in the morning. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And of course you can always write more, just document more, document everything as much as you think you need to, and then do it a little more.
Nice. Yeah, we did the High Sierra Trail this past summer, and there's a tendency not to take pictures or document when you're not having fun. And so the last day, the last hike into, the trailhead and getting picked up, it was like a death march. It was pretty warm. Water was scarce. Wasn't having a whole lot of fun. And my High Sierra Trail video is incomplete because I went back and I loaded up all the pictures and started putting stuff together. And I realized that I had like 2 pictures from the last day. So document more. That's good.
Especially when you're feeling like shit, it's so easy to be like, today sucks. I just want to get it over with. Just keep moving. But I don't know. Creative discipline is just as important as any other discipline.
That's a little profound right there. That's philosophical.
Well, thank you. And I mean, it's true though. It's like with losing weight, for example, discipline, it was eating the food, doing what you're supposed to do, doing what you're supposed to do, eat the foods you're supposed to eat, do the workouts you're supposed to do. And I know creativity is a muscle in the same way as, your physical muscle. You got to use it or you're going to lose it. And the more you use it, the stronger you'll get creatively. So yeah, it's easy to, just like it's easy to say, oh man, I've had a long day at work. I don't want to go for a run, or I don't want to go to the gym today. And it's easy to be like, it's been a long, shitty day on trail. I don't want to write tonight. I just want to go to bed, or I don't want to stop and take a picture. I just want to get to camp. It's the same thing, You've got to be disciplined across the board, and try to remind myself of that every day.
That's another bonus pro tip right there. Nice. Nicely said.
Pro tip number 3 or 4, wherever we're at with that.
Long story. Have you heard of type 2 fun?
I'm familiar. Yeah.
You are familiar. Do you have a type 2 fun story from the PCT? Do you have a favorite story you like to share that maybe when it was happening, it was not that fun, but you like to talk about it?
A type 2 fun story. When I was coming out of Green Valley, actually, we hitched into Santa Clarita when we got there the day before. Yeah, we got some sushi.
That's where I live.
Oh my God, no way.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, yeah, we hitched into Santa Clarita, and
I love the way you say that. That's great. You enunciate every syllable. That's great.
Santa Clarita.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were reading some far out comments. We're like, hey, we can hitch there and they might have sushi. And they did. And we kind of realized, oh, this is not a trail town. People think we're homeless. It is what it is. But, it was, so we came back the next day and we start, climb out of Green Valley it's not fun. Well, it's type 2 fun. Mm-hmm. In the purest sense of that, all a little bloated from some sushi, just climbing up this hill. And the words that came to mind were, I just, out of the blue, I was just dwelling on the type 2 fun I was having, thinking, man, like I'm just suffering right now. That's all this is. That's all, not all, but that's mostly what a thru hike is. And just the words "suffer well" came to mind. And I don't know, that really just kind of, it was like a light bulb moment for me. And suffer well, I spoke like the person I was like walking with out of the valley. I was just like, these words just came to me in this moment, and this seems pretty profound, and I just want to tell someone, suffer well. Like, this is kind of my mantra, I think, from here on out. And that, yeah, so I guess the day I developed my mantra, having type 2 fun, is a good type 2 fun story from the trail. And those words, 2 simple words, really did get me through some pretty shitty days, pretty shitty times. I don't know, climbing up a hill, just think, suffer well through this. And it's just kind of, all right, get back to it and quit feeling sorry for yourself.
Those are 2 great words that express a common sentiment out there sometimes. We talk about embrace the suck, suffer well. I think I've had a guest on and says that she became very comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And
it's
just
all
leaning into it.
Yeah. For some people, life is suffering, and you can either let that make you or break you. You can suffer, or you can suffer well through whatever is put in front of you. And it's worth suffering well.
If it's worth suffering, it's worth suffering well.
I like that.
Good. Hey, Josh, what's next for you? What's the next adventure? Any inclination to do the hometown trail, the AT?
I'm gonna be honest, the AT is pretty low on my list of priorities as far as my next adventure is concerned. Nothing against it. I know, the AT kids are diehard. But I want to do something international next. I've recently been toying with this idea. When I say toying with, I have a new obsession. Kind of like I had with the military, kind of like I had with the PCT. I had my next light bulb moment. And it sounds insane, but I really am committed to the idea of doing this sometime within the next few years. There are a ton of logistics to work out, but I want to do it's not even an established trail. So the Continental Divide Trail, you know that?
Yes.
Obviously.
Yes.
That's part of like a larger, like literal continental divide, like the tectonic plates that like collided to form that mountain range, which is kind of stems from the Andes, the Canadian Rockies. That kind of starts in Argentina, and I want to walk the length of the continental divide of the Americas, up through South America, Central America, eventually go through, the continental divide, the GDT, and end at this specific spot in Alaska, which is the one of the most northern points on this continent. Yeah. So that's what I'm working towards.
Holy smokes. How many miles is that?
I think 16,000, something like that.
Ooh.
Yeah. Extremely lofty ambition, but and there's a lot to figure out.
Yeah.
There's a lot of logistics involved in that. And I'm sure I'll do other smaller hikes here and there between then. But as far as what my next objective is, it's that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you've just published that out into the world. You've said that out into the ether.
I have.
People are now saying Long Story is going to do Argentina to Alaska on the Continental Divide. And so now there's some added pressure. I mean, you have to follow through on this. And we need to be back on during the trip and after the trip to talk about how it went.
Yeah. There's a lot, like I said, there's a lot to figure out with that, but that just know that's what I'm actively working towards at this moment. So starting to learn Spanish. Yeah. So there's no timeline on that yet. Probably be at least a few years before I do that. Hoping to, first of all, I need to get my book finished. That's number one priority. And I'd like to gain some sort of sponsorship to do something like that. But even if I just have to work my ass off and save up the money to do it, I'll do what I need to do. It's going to happen eventually. The logistics, they'll get figured out. But
yeah, I think there's a certain population of thru hikers that have a bit of obsessiveness about them. That they really they go down a rabbit hole, and I think you fall into that category. And if you can hear my dog barking in the background, I apologize.
It's all right.
All right. Hey, Josh, you know where we
are? Some segment of the show, the name of which escapes me at this moment.
That's correct.
The pro tip insight of the week.
That's right. We're at that time of the episode where you get to share some trail wisdom with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience better. You've done it throughout the episode, but what else do you have for us?
I guess the major pro tip I could give is I guess this might be a little, subjective coming from my point of view, but document everything as much as you can. I meet so many people they say, I wish I took more photos of, even just what I was seeing, especially the people you meet along the way, but take more pictures, take more videos, write more. If you're walking along and you even remotely think, hey, this might be a cool picture, take that picture. I don't care if it's with your phone. I don't care if it's with a $3,000 camera. Just, you'll be happy you have that memory in the long run.
Well said. Document, document, document.
Yes.
All right. So there you have it. That's it. This episode is just about in the books. Hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Long Story. I want to thank them for joining us this week. Long Story, how can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your latest adventures?
So I'm most active on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram at ILL_walktheearth, all one word. I have a TikTok by the same name that I'm kind of terrible at using and updating, but hey, feel free to follow me on there too. You can check out my website, joshmurphyimaging.com/I'llWalkTheEarth. Sign up for my newsletter, look out for blog posts, that kind of thing. Any major project updates I have will get posted on, probably Instagram, my website. Yeah, check it. Find me on those places.
Okay. Remember to check out the pod on social media as well. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I'll have to hit you up on TikTok there, Josh. And if you have comments or clips you want to share, you can send it to me at johnfreakinmuir@gmail.com.
The Adventure Media Recommendation.
Josh, I'm also looking you to share a recommendation for a book, a movie, documentary, website, some kind of media to keep our listeners connected to the outdoors. We call this our Adventure Media Recommendation. What do you have for us?
Well, of course, my book that doesn't exist yet. No, but in all seriousness, a book, definitely The Pursuit of Endurance by Jennifer Farr Davis. That book, I can honestly say that book legitimately changed my life. I don't know if I would have done the PCT if I didn't find that book when I found it, the nature in which I did. So and it's just a good read, truly. It's inspiring. She's an inspiring person, and there's just a lot of good information in there about through hiking, ultra running, all these endurance based sports. A lot of good information in that book.
Let's pick that up by Jennifer Farr Davis.
Shout out to Jennifer Farr Davis.
There you go.
Who I've never met. But...
What have we not asked you?
Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there, but Half Calf wants to know, before we wrap things up, we've got one more segment. What have I not asked you that you're dying to tell us about? What do we miss tonight? And I know we missed a lot because we just didn't have enough time. And so there might be enough out there for a second episode with you, Josh.
Yeah, I think something I wanted to bring up, the importance of like physically training for a thru hike. And I'm talking about like in the gym. Now, I don't know, there's a lot of schools of thought on this. You go on any old like Facebook post and people will be like, just get in shape on the trail, which I don't think is the best course of action. I saw a lot of people with injured ankles, injured feet, injured knees. And I just want to get this out there. If you're training for a long distance trail specifically, I think your best bet is to do like heavy squats, deadlifts, single leg deadlifts, single leg squats, depending on your mobility. And don't just think like walking on a Stairmaster or a treadmill is going to give you the same, I don't know, conditioning that you're going to get from hiking on a trail. In part of your preparation needs to be actually going, even if it's just walking through the woods in your backyard, depending on where you live. Get out and walk with weight on your back over varied terrain. Don't rely on like a Stairmaster or a treadmill solely. Do what you got to do at the end of the day. Everyone's got different availability to different things, but yeah, there seems to be some sentiment that indicates you don't need to strength train, and I think you really should do that to prevent injury and just make sure you're going to make it through a thru hike.
Every day is a leg day.
Every day is a leg day, 100%. And I can honestly say I had a shin splint once, and that was it. Knees are good, ankles good, back's good. That's not always the case with a lot of people. So,
well, long story. There
must be
something. There may be something to what you're saying. If you invested that kind of time in the gym working on your legs, and that's all you had out there with 2,300 plus miles, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, you just gotta protect your frame.
What was it saying? We can certainly hope for that.
We can certainly hope for that. Yes.
Okay. That is a wrap from the John Freaking Muir studio. Any more shout outs? We've had a few, but any more shout outs to friends and family, Josh?
Yeah, I guess just shout out to everyone that, followed along, and shout out to every friend I made along the way out there. If any of you are listening to this, I hope you're doing well. Feel free to reach out if you ever need me for anything.
Okay. Thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if you're bloated from sushi, hiking up from Green Valley, and just working on suffering well. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.